Hey guys, it's Sandro here, and today's video is an in-depth look at CarPro's newest ceramic coating, Cquartz SIC, where I'll be discussing and giving tips on its application as well as putting it through its paces with some comprehensive testing. This new coating will be replacing CarPro's own Cquartz TiO2 and enters the market 10 years after Cquartz's initial introduction. So it's almost like the end of an era and perhaps the beginning of a new one. The new Cquartz SIC contains a silica carbide infusion formulation, which is a binary compound of carbon with an element of lower or compatible electronegativity. So what does this mean? Well, according to CarPro, the added silica carbide should provide additional chemical resistance, and the overall new formulation should also display improved water spot resistance, increased levels of gloss, and added slickness. I received a sample of this coating about a month ago to test it out, but at the time of doing this review I wasn't able to find out any durability claims, but it looks like it's going to be priced identically to Cquartz TiO2 and U.K 3.0 and should be out soon, if not now. Now I'm going to start this review by trying to help you guys out with getting the best application and results from Cquartz SIC. Much like Cquartz TiO2, this isn't an instant or rapid flashing coating like Cquartz UK. In fact, there can be a large difference in how long it takes to flash and bond to the paint before you wipe or level it down. So in extremely hot climates, it could be as little as 2 to 3 minutes, and in extremely cold climates, it could be as long as 10 to 12 minutes. But basically, the best time to wipe down this coating is by waiting as long as possible or just before the coating becomes difficult to remove any streaks in the finish. So let's look at how you're going to work out your flash and wipe off times. So to start with, you're going to apply Cquartz SIC to your first half meter or so panel section using a standard crisscross method, making sure you do at least 3 to 4 vertical and horizontal overlapping lines in total. Wait 2 minutes, then wipe off just a small area of that section. If you don't see any streaks and it wipes off quite easily, then you know you haven't waited too long, and you should continue to wait another 2 minutes and do the exact same wipe again in another small area, and so on. So basically, you'll continue to do this until you get to an area where you wipe down the coating and there's streaks in the finish that you can't remove, which basically tells you that you've waited too long at that point. So in my case, where the temperature was about 20 degrees Celsius, 8 minutes was the point where the coating had flashed and cured to the stage where I could no longer remove all the streaks. So for me, this allowed me to discover that about 6 to 7 minutes will be the optimal time to level or wipe down this coating in my particular environment and temperature to get the best possible results and user experience. I know it may be hard to see in the footage, but the section that I wiped at the 6-minute stage is darker and richer than the sections I wiped at the 2 and 4-minute stages, which means that the coating has effectively bonded better and actually laid down thicker when I worked out my optimal wipe-off time. Once you've worked this out, just apply the coating over that whole first section again, and once again wait for it to flash and wipe it down to remove any streaks, which should come off quite easily. Once you've done this and you know what your wipe off time is, you can basically get down to work and coat the entire car, knowing that you're going to get the best possible application and results. This is just a technique I'm sharing with you guys that helps me out when I'm testing out a new coating. So I'm not trying to confuse you or say that you need to do anything different with this coating compared to most coatings on the market. It's just a way to ensure that you're getting the very best results with any true ceramic coating application. So with all that said, let's talk about the user experience of Cquartz SIC. I'm going to use Cquartz UK as a direct comparison because I also know there'll be a lot of questions about how it compares to it. Firstly, this isn't a slightly sticky or even grippy coating similar to Cquartz UK. It applies with very little friction and spreads throughout the panel with extreme ease and a super nice user experience. You'll also notice that it doesn't so much create a more typical rainbow coating effect like Cquartz UK, but rather hazes over in more of a stark white appearance that's almost closer to the look of a wax or sealant hazing over. As I mentioned earlier, it is a slower flashing coating, so unlike Cquartz UK that almost instantly flashes and bonds to the paint, You will be typically waiting at least a few minutes for CQuartz SIC to effectively bond to the paint. Once it's flashed, the wipe off itself is really super easy and definitely less grippy than CQuartz UK by comparison. So again, it's quite nice and actually feels super slick and rewarding to work with. And another tip I can offer is to just wipe enough to collect the excess coating and remove any high spots. And don't use force or wipe the panel excessively to once again get the very best results. So all in all, from application to wipe off, there's clearly been an effort here to create a coating with a nice, rewarding and friendly user experience, which in my experience is really important with any new consumer-based ceramic coating. On this second test panel, I'm going to apply 2 layers of CQuartz SIC on one end, 2 layers of CQuartz UK on the other end, and a layer of CQuartz UK topped with CQuartz SIC in the middle as a comparison. To really get the best durability and performance of CQuartz coatings, or really many other coatings on the market, you will need to apply 2 layers in my experience. Now that doesn't mean you have to, but if you want a durability closer to 18 months and beyond, then a second coat with some good prep work and a good application is really the best way to ensure that. Now, according to CarPro, they recommend applying a second coat approximately 45 to 90 minutes after the first one. So basically, that means you'd finish your first layer and then immediately start your second layer with both these coatings. Now, if you're in an extremely hot environment, you may want to coat just half of the car and then do a second coat on that same half of the vehicle immediately. And then you'd basically do the same again on the second half of the car, because there just won't be enough time to do a whole car to a quality level with a 45 to 60 minute time frame in my experience, unless you have someone helping you out. But if you're in a colder environment, then you should be okay to coat the whole car and then do your second coat immediately after the first one. CarPro also recommends that if you miss the 90-minute time frame, you should wait at least 24 hours before doing an additional layer. Now, I'm sure CarPro has done their own testing to suggest this, but in my experience with almost every coating I've used, the best bond is created with an additional layer before the coating has time to harden and become overly hydrophobic. So I'm not sure if I agree with that, but that's the information they provide. In any case, I still think you're going to get the best bond and potential durability if you layer these coatings within the 1 to 2 hour time frame, but I guess it's debatable. Now, the suede cloths I used to apply CQuartz SIC did harden up a little, as you can hopefully see in the footage, but they certainly didn't harden or stiffen up quite to the level of CQuartz UK, which always tends to go rock hard. Now, hardness is just one part of a coating's characteristic, but I thought I'd just touch on that to provide a little more information. Now, just before we get to the other results and testing, one claim CarPro makes about CQuartz SIC is that it does have a higher resistance to water spotting. Now, last time I did this water spot test in another video, I left the panel with water outside for a month, and I had a bunch of comments saying that the test was just too extreme and unrealistic. So this time, after the panel was given a week to cure, I placed it outside with water on top for 24 hours. The thing is that what we can see in person and what I can capture on camera are two different things. Now, I always fully decontaminate and polish the panels before testing, but the reason I spend so much time on these reviews and do things like leave compounding haze on the panels, mostly work on black paint, and sometimes use more extreme measures is so that you guys can see the results in a clear and precise manner in the footage, rather than just watching something that gives you no real information and you just have to take someone's word for it. In the end, I wasn't too happy with this test, as it's a little hard to see the subtle water spots in the footage or a clear result. And if I had time, I would have redone it, but unfortunately I just didn't have the time. Having said that, hopefully you guys can still see a bit of a difference where CQuartz UK has accumulated more of the noticeable water spots, whereas CQuartz SIC just didn't seem to create as many, and the ones that it did almost seemed to come off instantly after a hand wash. So what I would say, also based on some prior testing, is that CQuartz SIC definitely seems to mitigate water mineral deposits and buy you a little extra time to deal with them compared to CQuartz UK or really most other coatings. Now, does it completely resist or solve the water spot issue? I'd have to say no. But I also have to say that it does seem to show some promise in that area by resisting or rather delaying water spot etchings compared to most other ceramic or graphene coatings I've tested to date. So although I don't quite yet feel confident in saying that it's going to be a solution to water spots, it definitely feels like it's a step in the right direction. So after these two panels were given a week to fully cure, the first test was assessing the gloss and saturation levels that Cquartz SIC creates on automotive paint. Now I think a lot of you guys know by now that I just love the look of Cquartz UK, and I honestly think that in its price range it's simply the best looking coating. But I have to say that this new Cquartz SIC does seem to look a little better. Now hopefully you'll see it more clearly when we have a look at the second test panel with two coats, but it just seems to have the ability to mask more of the compounding haze on the panel and finish a little darker with a little more saturation and reflective gloss. And when you see two coats of it compared to two coats of Cquartz UK, it actually becomes a lot clearer and the difference becomes a lot more noticeable. Now I haven't done any direct comparisons with Cquartz Pro or Finest Reserve, but it almost feels like Cquartz SIC could potentially look just as good as them, which is surprising for such an easy to use consumer-based coating. Now the only thing that really surprised me here was that the best looking section of all was Cquartz UK topped with Cquartz SIC. Now I tried this same combination in the lead up to this video during my prior testing, and the combination of the two just seemed to look fantastic every time. Now why this is, I'm really not sure, as I would have expected two coats of Cquartz SIC to look the best. But maybe it's just something about their differences that mesh really well and create such a rich and glossy finish that potentially looks just about as good as any coating combination I've tried. In any case, I just couldn't imagine anyone would be disappointed with the way this new coating looks. Next was evaluating the slickness, feel and lack of friction that these coatings create on automotive paint. Now this test was extremely clear-cut and obvious in its results. So whereas Cquartz UK has more of a typically mildly slick finish that's more in line with most ceramic coatings on the market, Cquartz SIC just couldn't be more different, as it creates quite an uncommonly slick finish that is closer in feel to a slick spray sealant rather than a durable ceramic coating, which do tend to be a little bit more grippy by nature. Now there are a few other ceramic coatings on the market that are also slick to the touch, but this is definitely CarPro's slickest ever ceramic coating, and I'd even say that it's got to be one of the slickest coatings I've ever applied with such a nice rewarding touch and feel that should also greatly help minimize wash-induced swells with its extreme lack of friction. The other thing to note is that two layers of Cquartz SIC also seem to further increase its slickness, and the same can be said for Cquartz UK, but just to a lesser extent. And with Cquartz SIC applied over UK, it certainly retains that amazing lack of friction when it's used over the top of it, which is great to see. So onto some water behaviour testing to assess the hydrophobic abilities of this new coating. Now on the surface, and with initially comparing Cquartz SIC to Cquartz UK in relation to water shedding rates and water bead contact angles, it becomes immediately clear that its hydrophobic abilities are at least just as good. And being that Cquartz UK has always had great water behaviour, that's definitely a good start. But as we do some further tests with diverse water spray patterns and varying volumes of water, hopefully you guys will see in the footage that Cquartz SIC does seem to sheet the water just a split second faster than UK, and the water beads also tend to look just a touch more propped up and also travel down the panel a little quicker. Now it's not a night and day difference, as it is still quite close, but based on all my testing to date, I do feel confident in saying that Cquartz SIC is a little more impressive with its water behaviour, which should be able to not only compete but also outdo a lot of other ceramic coatings on the market. So onto some chemical resistance testing to try and evaluate this coating's resistance to environmental contamination and its potential durability. As per usual, I'm using CarPro Multi-X at a 1:3 dilution ratio, and I'm going to start by just lightly spraying it on, letting it dwell, and then applying it more liberally and getting more physical and aggressive with each subsequent application. The first thing you'll notice is that Cquartz SIC just seems to reject the chemical and not allow it to sit or dwell on the surface like Cquartz UK. So this definitely reaffirms its hydrophobic and slickness qualities, which should also help prevent environmental contamination from bonding to its surface as readily. Now, as I progress with this testing, you will see that both coatings here do hold up extremely well, and it does take a bit of time to finally see them start to diminish their hydrophobic behaviour. So as you'll hopefully see, there isn't a clear difference in one coating being obviously more chemical resistant than the other. But there is a big difference in how they achieve this chemical resistance and potential durability. Cquartz SIC just keeps on rejecting the chemical initially, so it seems like it's going to perform better in the first half of its life because of its superior repelling nature. But once it does start to break down, it does also seem to do so a little quicker than Cquartz UK, which by contrast seems to break down quite evenly and consistently from start to finish. You'll hopefully see the exact thing happen again on the second test panel with 2 coats of each coating, with the only real difference being that it takes more time and aggression to break 2 layers of those coatings down. In the end, I don't feel there's a huge difference in the potential durability of both these coatings, which based on all my testing are going to be more or less the same. But I would still tend to say that Cquartz UK just seems to hold on a touch longer towards the end of its life, but it's really quite close. Now, while we have a look at the second test panel with 2 coats of each coating, I'm just going to sum up the results, and while you guys watch the rest of the footage, I'll then end with my conclusions. But firstly, as I mentioned before, and as you'll hopefully see, 2 coats of Cquartz SIC, just like 2 coats of Cquartz UK, seems to give you a little bump in hydrophobic behaviour with slightly quicker water sheeting and slightly more pronounced water bead contact angles. Additionally, it definitely took me a fair few extra hits with the chemical to break down both these coatings compared to the previous panel with just a single layer of each coating. So there's definitely a few benefits to be had by applying 2 layers. Now, the one thing that really surprised me over the course of my testing was that layering Cquartz SIC over Cquartz UK actually seemed to perform the best, not only in looks and behaviour, but also in chemical resistance and potential durability. Maybe it's got something to do with the added repellency of Cquartz SIC combined with the added slower breakdown of Cquartz UK. But I've done this test a few times, and combining these coatings with Cquartz SIC on top always seems to fare better than 2 layers of the individual coatings over themselves, which I found to be really interesting. So onto my conclusions. Firstly, there's no denying that Cquartz SIC is definitely quite different to not only any other coating CarPro has released, but also to most other ceramic coatings I've tried. So it definitely feels unique and certainly nothing like Cquartz UK or even the older Cquartz TiO2 it's replaced. It always takes time to truly rate a ceramic coating and even years to fully understand what you can expect from it. But based on quite a bit of testing on my part, it's definitely showing some initial promise, and time will tell if that promise becomes fact. I have absolutely no idea if CarPro has tested Cquartz SIC over Cquartz UK, but I've just been blown away with this combination as it looks, feels and performs like a match made in heaven. And I'm actually really keen to try it on one of my own cars to see how it all goes. I started off this video with my application tips because I think it's really important to get this right, and I'll admit that I actually got it wrong the first time I applied it. The thing is that this coating can be deceptively easy to work with, as it hazes over very quickly, so you can actually wipe it off too soon and it still feels like the timing is right. Now if you do this, the coating will still look decent, feel nice and have good water behaviour. However, it's not going to be anywhere near as durable, and you won't experience the true potential of it if your application technique and timing is off. Now, it's not like it's overly difficult or hard to get right. It's just what I mentioned before, that it's a little different to most other coatings, so there was just a learning curve I had to work through, and I hope that this information helps anyone out who's going to try it. Now, in many ways, if you're looking to apply your very first ceramic coating, I'd still tend to recommend Cquartz UK, as it's just a fail-safe coating that's really hard to get wrong. But if you've got a few coatings under your belt, I'd almost say give Cquartz SIC a go instead. And if you're up for it, try it over Cquartz UK, as I'd love to hear what you guys think and if it works as well as it's shown in my testing. So by all initial accounts, it really seems like CarPro has done a pretty good job here with Cquartz SIC, and I really think it's a great improvement and a welcome change over the current Cquartz TiO2. Its application seems really nice and rewarding to work with, it looks and feels really nice, shows potential to deal with water spots a little better than most current coatings, but I guess time will tell. As always, I really hope you guys enjoyed and found this video useful. Please share this video, like, comment and subscribe to this channel to show your support for this content, and I'll see you guys soon.